Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio. You're listening to The Jay Shapiro Show.
Hello again, this is Jay Shapiro. Thanks for listening. This week, I want to touch upon two topics that are current and I think important. First, it has been said that Israel is a nice place and a bad neighborhood. That neighborhood is changing now in a way that could not have been predicted even a year ago. Most of the Muslim countries are of what is known as the Sunni variety of Islam. Iran, on the other hand, is a Shiite Muslim country, and the Sunnis and the Shiites do not get along well with each other for historic reasons. Israel has signed normalization agreements with a number of Sunni countries. In addition to the threat to Israel from Iran, Turkey is a Muslim country with which Israel has had very good relations since the founding of Israel. This is because after the First World War, Turkey became more secular. However, under its present regime, it is backsliding to Ottoman-style politics and has become hostile to Israel. So although the relations are developing with a number of Muslim countries, Iran and Turkey remain as threats. I'll say a few words about this. Also, a new Biden government will take office this week and in Washington, and Biden has already declared he'll make more conciliatory attitude toward Iran than the Trump administration did. And a number of Democratic members of Congress have also written to Biden expressing their desire to be more conciliatory to Iran. And this does not bode well for Israel, and it does not bode well for its new allies here in the Middle East, the Sunni countries. So I'll say a few words about this new situation. Again, I do not claim to be an expert on these topics, but I find that most of the experts don't know that much either, so I figure I can add my 2 cents also. I'll be back after the break. Thanks again for listening.
The return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel was prophesied in the Bible thousands of years ago and is coming true today. Shalom. Join me, Josh Wander, on Israel Unplugged. Listen in as we delve into the spiritual and physical aspects of the Jewish return to Zion. We'll discuss the biblically mandated, historic, and of course practical understandings of this incredible transition from exile to redemption. That's Israel Unplugged, every Monday on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com.
You're listening to The Jay Shapiro Show.
You're back with Jay Shapiro. I want to say a few words about geopolitics because I've been listening to some of the experts, and I figure I can just be at the same level of expert because I read the papers, I listen to the radio, and I see what's happening, and I have some thoughts. So I want to talk about what's happening with Morocco. Over the past few months, Israel has experienced a lot of peace that it didn't know before. The so-called Abraham Accords have normalized relations with Arab countries that we're not expected to see in our lifetime. Of all the 4 Islamic State normalization agreements, the most recent one was with Morocco, and Morocco, unlike the others, has a special potential for long-term strategic advantage if it's properly nurtured, because peace with the Muslim world has always been a strategic imperative for the Jewish state, because we are located in the middle of the Islamic world. And one key element in Israel's pursuit of peace was the idea of finding a country that could be a bridge between Israel and other distant Islamic nations. But that didn't work out too well when Israel tried to do that with Turkey back in the early 1990s. The problem was that the country changed and Islamist nationalist strongmen took over who had no appetite for peacemaking with Israel. Still, the Turkey experience had a potential that a Islamic nation trying to get a better position in the global economy and greater domestic stability found that Israel could be a willing partner who, in return, desired a reliable security and diplomatic partner to help keep the regional peace. So, three elements essentially caused the decline of the Turkish Israeli relationship, and these elements are absent in Morocco. The first is the proximity. The Middle East is a lot of political activity. It draws in any nation who desires influence and power. Ironically, one of the greatest factors contributing to a Moroccan-Israeli alliance is that Morocco is not actually in the Middle East, but is the westernmost nation on the coast of North Africa. It also part of it is on the Atlantic Ocean. That's about as far west as you can get. So future Moroccan-Israeli relations, because of Morocco's essential status as an outsider, won't be as susceptible to the politics of the Middle East. The lesson here is that geography matters. The bridge needs to come from outside, not within the Middle East. So that is exactly where Morocco is. It's an Islamic nation. I shouldn't say that. It's a Moslem nation. The word Islamic has a negative attitude. It's a Moslem nation that's not really in the Middle East. That's one item. The second element is history. Turkey's Ottoman past of domination shapes its aspirations today. The Turkey under the Ottomans once ruled this area, and they're frustrated because they don't rule anymore since the First World War. Keep in mind that Palestine was under the Ottomans from 1517 to 1917, 400 years. And now they're frustrated. Essentially, they're not in the Middle East anymore. Morocco has no such pretensions to empire and is far less susceptible to a populist foreign policy that would be against relations with Israel. Morocco, like Turkey, shares an international frontier with the West in the form of its border with Spain. So this reinforces its moderate orientation toward Western nations. Also, unlike Turkey, it doesn't maintain territorial grievances with its Western neighbors. And that's the thing that stokes Turkish nationalism, and it doesn't stoke Moroccan nationalism. By the way, it's something historical of historical interest. The Moroccan-American Treaty of Friendship was signed in 1777. It's taught in American history when there used to be the Barbary pirates and the Americans sent the Marines there. They signed a Treaty of Friendship, as I said, in 1777, and it's the oldest unbroken friendship treaty in U.S. history. By the way, it's also not mentioned that Moroccan soldiers served in the French army in both the First and Second World Wars. And Morocco also has a melting pot culture. It boasts the world's fourth largest Arab population, and yet its history bears a rich ethnic makeup, having all kinds of people like Phoenicians and Jews. So the lesson for Israel is that history cannot be photoshopped for political convenience. Turkey has backslided into Ottoman-style politics. That's no accident. An established history for tolerance and pluralism is a cultural commodity precious to a Jewish state, subjected to national prejudice and ethnic demonization, and Morocco is known for its pluralism and tolerance. So that's the second element. The third element is institutional politics. And the nature of the Middle East, the deeper the roots, the less vulnerable they are to the scorched earth passion that flare up in the region. Turkey once seemed so attractive on account of the trappings of a modern democratic state, which it got after the First World War. But the revolution after the First World War, the Ottomans were gone, and it became what's called Kemalist, and that is disappeared now. Erdogan, the head of Turkey, runs an autocracy, and he's, by the way, he virtually changed at whim the Turkish constitution. So, though Morocco is a constitutional monarchy, it has enjoyed a stable political order that has weathered the test of time. While Turkey's democracy today is regressing, Morocco's government is gradually liberalizing, just the opposite. And there exists an effective political opposition in Morocco, and that makes Morocco the first Arab country to have an opposition party assuming power from an elective process. So, to put it clearly, Morocco may not have the sort of allure that Turkey once had as to be a bridge builder between East and West. And Israel must learn the lesson. We learned from Turkey. It did not end up being the bridge we wanted. Nevertheless, Morocco has the time-stamped credentials to make the argument it is one of the very few modern and stable Muslim states in the entire world. Israel finds in Morocco a stable, democratizing, and liberalizing Arab Muslim nation, a state that enjoys free trade agreements with the United States and the European Union, and an economy based on free trade principles. Israel, for its part, offers many things for the Moroccans to find interesting if they want to embrace the 21st century. For one, Israel generates greater national prestige on the world stage by making it a power broker in the region, further bypassing the Israel litmus test. In other words, Israel presents something that Morocco wants, and Morocco will bolster its status as a moderate in a region if it is friendly with Israel. But the question is, what will happen? We now have the Abraham Accords. As the first Israel-U.S. Delegation touched down in Rabat 2 weeks ago, Rabat being, of course, the capital of Morocco, they've upgraded diplomacy with Morocco, and it has to be done carefully, where cultural exchanges, diplomatic exchanges, public relations become important, if not more, than the papers signed between the two. What actually happens on the ground is what important. The first time in many years, Israel has an opportunity to begin building an enduring strategic alliance with a Muslim state located at the far end of the Mediterranean Ocean. Israel is the very east of the Mediterranean Ocean. Morocco is at the very west of the Mediterranean Ocean. And it would be really nice, meaningful, I think, for both countries to have good diplomatic relations. We both have stable governments, and we both want to be part of the area. I'll be back after the break.
Hi everyone, this is Andrea Simento from Jerusalem, inviting you to drop everything and join me on my show, Pull Up a Chair. We'll visit this week's quirky stories, meet fabulous guests, and discover my Israel. Together we'll laugh, shout, and explain the topics that make us say, hey, we've got to talk about that. So get comfortable and pull up a chair with me, Andrea Simento, every Thursday on Israel News Talk Radio.
You're listening to The Jay Shapiro Show.
Hi, you're back with Jay Shapiro. This portion of the program, I want to touch a number of items not related to each other, but they provide background about what's happening in the state of Israel and in the Jewish world. Since this program is only on once a week, I pick and choose these items because I think it's important for listeners, particularly outside the country, to get a feeling about what's happening here under the headlines. The first item has to do with the COVID and the vaccine rollout, which is inspiring aliyah and return of Israelis. The coronavirus crisis has accomplished what decades of government ad campaigns was not successful in doing. It has brought actually hundreds of thousands of Israelis back from abroad and made the country more enticing as a home for American Jews. As of July, which is 6 months ago, more than 190,000 Israelis have returned to Israel from abroad, including more than 6,000 who had been away from the country for over 6 months. All this is according to data released by the Foreign Ministry. Many of those who returned early in the pandemic had been working actually in China, where the effects of the virus were first felt. Israeli embassies and consulates abroad have issued approximately 10,000 travel documents, including new passports, often for children of Israelis born abroad who have not been to Israel yet. And they've been renewing and extending passports for Israelis planning to come back since the beginning of the pandemic. While Israel has had its challenges handling the pandemic, it still has a notably lower mortality rate from this disease in many countries around the world where Israelis tend to live, and that's primarily the United States, which has had over 1,000 deaths per every million of the population, as opposed to Israel with 370 deaths per million. So the United States has 3 times the rate of deaths due to the pandemic. Areas where many Israelis live, that include New York, have been hit particularly hard. For example, there have been over 7,700 deaths in the borough of Brooklyn alone since the pandemic began, and many of them are in Jewish neighborhoods. And now, with the vaccination campaign in Israel bringing the Pfizer vaccine to more than 1 million Israelis in less than 2 weeks, Israel is looking more attractive than ever as a place to live, both to Israelis who have been living abroad and American Jews who have been thinking of moving to Israel. Because of my age, my wife and I both got the first shot. There's supposed to be a first shot and a second shot 3 weeks later. My wife and I both belong to two different sick funds, but we got my wife got her shot on a Tuesday, and I got my shot on a Thursday, 2 days later, and it was extremely well organized. No crowds, no pushing. In both cases, we were told when to come to get the shot. Our names were on the list. We came in, said who we were. They took us in. My wife had to wait about 15 minutes. I actually, it was rather interesting. It was very unusual for Israel. I walked in, I went over to a desk where a fellow was sitting there with a big list of names, and I gave him my name. And as he was looking my name up, a nurse came over and took me by the arm. She could hardly wait to give me the shot. So after he confirmed the fact that it was me, she took me in and gave me the shot, and I was out right away. So thank goodness for that. So anybody who would arrive now in Israel as new immigrants, they'd immediately be admitted to one of the country's four health funds. For returning residents, the process is a little bit more complicated. Israeli citizens who have lived abroad for years and have not kept up with their Israeli Social Security payments have to pay 12,000 shekels and then may join the health funds when they return. This is according to a spokesman from one of the health funds. In other words, if you've been out of the country, you're an Israeli who's been out of the country and you haven't kept up your payments, then you have to fork over 12,000 shekel. It's just the next item that I want to discuss is one which I debated before deciding to indeed talk about it. It's something that sounds a little bit not so nice, but I think it's important for people to realize that there is a phenomenon in the Israeli army. It's not a big phenomenon, but it's something that is being handled. It has to do with suicide of soldiers. The Israeli army will increase efforts to prevent suicides among soldiers. These conclusions were drawn by the Manpower Directorate of the Army. During the year 2020, 9 soldiers committed suicide, and in 2019, 12 soldiers committed suicide. I don't know what the numbers are like in other armies, but these are the facts in Israel, and it's something that the army authorities take very seriously. To combat this phenomenon, the army has developed a system that will help it better identify soldiers who become suicidal, who are at risk. The Army is taking this extremely seriously, and they have identified 6 parameters that might affect the soldier. The first is the sense of being meaningful and essential. People want to feel meaningful and essential, and if you don't, it lowers your mood. The second factor is major changes in a soldier's day-to-day life. And these things happen because when you're in the army, you really have very little control of how your day is going to be spent. The third is a sense of disappointment, and I'm not quite sure how that is a parameter. Apparently, it has to do with what a soldier wants to do in the army, and he may not be able to do it. He might want to get into a certain group, and he doesn't pass the preliminaries, the things of that nature. The other is that there are major doubts in a soldier's life. One of the things being in the army, I know from my own experience, is if you don't have good friends around you to share things that are happening, it's very bad. And another thing, which is very obvious, I think, is how strict are the soldiers' commanders and officers. If you have a soldier's commanders who are really unfair or impatient, that really can affect your attitude. The also, and this is also quite important, is the sixth factor is the way that soldier interprets troubles at home. If he has trouble in his home and he's not there to help what's happening, or if he's away in the army and he knows there's trouble at home, but he doesn't know how to measure it, how bad it is, that can affect him. This last one, the troubles at home, could be more dominant during the coronavirus period, in which many soldiers are experiencing changes in their lives, and they might feel that the crisis is affecting their families' lives, particularly financially. So it's very important to realize that a soldier is he's away from his family. Many of them are away, the younger ones are away for the first time, and they're alone. You have to understand that a soldier is in a crisis in real time, and now with the coronavirus, they might be extremely worried about what's happening in their homes. So what's happening now is that officers and commanders in the Israeli army are attending workshops in an effort to combat this phenomenon. Sometimes a soldier complains just to improve the conditions of service, and it's hard to realize that he's going through a real problem that should be addressed by professionals. So commanders and officers are constantly being briefed on how to carry out the proper military procedures to deal with these kinds of situations. They're being told how to identify the six parameters which I mentioned, and not only to identify it, but to know how to deal with these issues. They're very serious. And I want to close this segment of the program referring back to something I said at the beginning about these Israelis who are returning because of the pandemic. So whether it's because the global economic situation is so dismal due to the pandemic, or because Israel has truly become a desirable alternative for world Jewry, the Aliyah in general is rising. There are an estimated 14.7 million Jews in the world, more than 6.8 million of whom live in Israel. It's true that Israel is undergoing political turmoil, facing its fourth election in 2 years, and the medical, economic, and psychological hardships of the virus are painful. Although the country is at the start of its third lockdown, Israel is leading the world in its coronavirus vaccination program, having inoculated 400,000 in just 1 week. On that note, I'll close this section of the program. I think it's a positive note. I'll be back.
Are you interested in transforming your life, drawing closer to the Creator, and uncovering the deeper meanings and hidden treasures in the Hebrew Bible?
Then join me, Rav Yitzhak Michelson,
And me, William Hall,
on the Science of Kabbalah, where we are seeking to narrow the gap between what we understand of our physical and spiritual worlds. So make sure to tune in every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Israel time, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, here on Israel News Talk Radio.
You're listening to The Jay Shapiro Show.
You're back with Jay Shapiro. The Trump administration was extremely harsh on the Iranians. But now we're going to have a different administration under Biden and the Democrats. They might even control both houses of the Congress. Amid the pandemic, some U.S. congressmen already appeared to be spending their political capital on one thing: appeasing the Iranian regime and pushing for a softer policy towards the Iranians, which is not good for Israel. what happened. More than 100 congressmen recently signed a letter expressing their support and urging President-elect Joe Biden to rejoin the nuclear deal. This letter was sent by congressmen, all are Democrats, and they wrote, "We are united in our support for swiftly taking the necessary diplomatic steps in order to return both Iran and the United States to compliance with the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action as a starting point for further negotiations." Now, Biden has pointed out, for example, in an opinion piece, that he's on board with the idea of appeasing the Iranians. He said, and I quote, "I will offer Tehran a credible path back to diplomacy. If Iran returns to strict compliance with the nuclear deal, the United States would rejoin the agreement as a starting point for negotiations. We will work to strengthen and extend the nuclear deal's provision while addressing other areas of concern." What this means is that sanctions will be lifted against the Iranian regime, and the ruling clerics there will ensure the survival of their establishment and militia groups across the Middle East. This is why the Iranian leaders are apparently very excited. Tehran is also confident that the next U.S. administration will rejoin the nuclear deal. The president of Iran said he had no doubt about a pending return to the status quo under Joe Biden's administration. Now, apparently, these people have learned nothing from recent history. Some may argue that Iran's leaders would change their destructive behavior if they were rewarded in advance with appeasement policies and financial incentives. This is really wrong. There was an opportunity to initiate and expand peaceful policies during the 8-year administration of Barack Obama. Throughout this time, Obama made unprecedented compromises in an attempt to appease the rulers of Iran. He met them with generosity and flexibility, and he gave them a lot of cash money. As sanctions against Iran were lifted during the Obama administration, it quickly became clear that those actions, instead of moderating the activity of the Iranians, gave Iran a global legitimacy in the eyes of the international community. The United States gave all kinds of gifts, including billions of dollars in cash, and the lifting of sanctions, but it generated more billions in revenue for Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, as well for terror groups. Tehran also used the revenues to expand its influence throughout the Middle East. And now Iran is also extending its tentacles into Venezuela and South America as a beachhead for diplomatic and commercial expansion. So these people now, these democratic lawmakers, are pushing for a softer policy toward the Iranians, do not seem even slightly concerned about Iran's role as the world's foremost state sponsor of terrorism. It's a threat far more immediate and closer to Israel, as its agents or proxies could strike virtually anywhere in the world at any time, but particularly Israel. So what's happening is these democratic lawmakers are emboldening and empowering a regime that doesn't hesitate to kill Americans, for example. There's a whole list of Americans who've been killed over the last 20 or 30 years. Trump rightfully warned the Iranians that if one American is killed, I'll hold Iran responsible. Think it over. Those were his exact words. Now, these Democratic lawmakers also do not seem even slightly concerned about the Iranian regime repeatedly calling for annihilating Israel, a UN member state. The truth of the matter is that threat should compel Iran's removal from the United Nations. For example, um, Article 2(4) of the UN Charter states all members of the United Nations shall refrain in their international relations from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state or in any other manner inconsistent with the purposes of the United Nations. That is what it says in the UN Charter, while at the same time, Iran publicly threatens that they're going to destroy Israel. The Iran Supreme Leader, Ali Khamenei, made Iran's intentions clear while meeting with students back in May of 2019. He said, and I quote, "You young people should be assured that you will witness the demise of the enemies of humanity, meaning the degenerate American civilization and the demise of Israel." The deputy commander of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, speaking on Iran's Channel 2 TV, announced that Israel is, and I quote, "vulnerable and bringing itself closer to death." He made the strategy of the Iranian government unmistakably clear by stating, and I quote, "Our strategy is to erase Israel from the global political map. And it seems that considering the evil that Israel is doing, it is bringing itself closer to that." So the bottom line is, it's unfortunate that the priority of these Democratic lawmakers does not seem to concern advancing the interests of the American people or of the West, but instead they're appeasing the mullahs of Iran. They do not stop killing Americans. They chant death to America, and they continually and publicly call for the annihilation of Israel. So now you have, as I said at the outset, a letter signed by Democratic members of Congress, both the House of Representatives and the Senate, saying that they are united in their support for taking the necessary diplomatic steps in order to return both Iran and the United States to compliance with the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, something which the Iranians have been violating consistently since they signed the agreement. So the bottom line is, and it's something that I say with a certain amount of fear, the Iranians have publicly declared they want to destroy Israel. The Obama administration kowtowed to the Iranians, even giving them millions of dollars in cash. And now we have an American administration about to take office in which the Biden said he will offer Tehran a credible path back to diplomacy. So the very fact that the incoming administration has not only publicly announced that they want to bring Iran back to the negotiating table, but they seem to be totally blind to the activity of the Iranians, particularly against the United States over the last years. They've killed Americans in Beirut in 1983. They killed Americans on an Iranian vessel. They attacked the USS Cole, an American ship. And on 9/11, nearly 3,000 people were killed. So recently Iran's leadership said something about the U.S. embassy in Iraq that it would be hit by rockets. So the Donald Trump took issue with them, but apparently the incoming Biden administration is soft on Iran. And that's something that we have to keep in mind as you see the developments going forth, particularly in what's going to be the first year of the Biden administration. The way it behaves during the first few months will be indicative of what to expect over the next 4 years, and it may not be good for the state of Israel. So I just wanted to share that thought with the listeners. Till next time, Jay Shapiro signing off.
If you love Israel News Talk Radio, then you'll love our Facebook page. We keep you up to date on what's happening in Israel, plus little surprise treasures that we don't share on the radio. Go now to follow us on Facebook. Just look for the Israel News Talk Radio Facebook page, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us by clicking on the like button. We post great stuff there that you'll want to share. Israel News Talk Radio on Facebook and Israel News Radio on Twitter.
If you're hearing this message, everyone else can too. Advertise with Israel News Talk Radio and get your message out to people. We'll build a personalized package for you. Contact advertising at israelnewstalkradio.com.
Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Hey, this is Jake in Anchorage, Alaska, and I love listening to all the super interesting interviews and up-to-date information on what's happening in Israel.
Hello, this is Anna King, originally from London, now living in Israel. And what can I say? Israel News Talk Radio is my cup of tea.
My name is Bhaskar. I'm from India, and I love listening because you get to know the truth and wonderful voices from this lovely country.
Mom! Okay, wait a minute. Hi, this is Chava Dax, and I'm calling from the rolling hills of Ma'ale Adumim, just north of Jerusalem. I always listen to Israel News Talk Radio to get all the latest news and commentary and to keep me up to date every day.
This is Sarah Dax from Ma'ale Adumim, and I'm 12. I wish Israel News Talk Radio was boring so my mom wouldn't listen to it all the time. Mom!
You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
News, opinion, and more. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.